Okay, so in this video we're going to look at how to create forms in Dreamweaver. So we talked about forms in the last video, so here I'm going to go into Dreamweaver. I'm going to create a new file. That's going to be an HTML5 file. I'll just give it a title form, and I'm going to click create, and that'll give us a blank page to start with. So we want to make sure that our form goes inside of the body. So in my code editor, I'm just going to go inside the body. And you'll see here in the insert panel, I'm on the HTML section. So I'm going to put in the main tag here. And I'll give it a class of, actually I don't need to give it a class, just give it that. And I'll delete this content and go down the line. Okay, so in the main, I want to put this in the form inside of the main section, and I'm going to go into the insert panel, go down to form, and here we have all the form elements. So the ones that we talked about, you can see that the new ones are here: the URL, tell, search, number, range, color, month, date, week, time. All these ones are here that we talked about. Radios, checkboxes, labels. So all of this stuff that we talked about in the previous videos here. So our first step would be to add the form tag first. And the form tag gets placed. Notice that nothing happens in the visual area. There's no attributes to the form tag, so I'm going to add those now. Action equals, and I don't have an action for this. Method equals post. And notice how Dreamweaver does that. So that's going to be our container. Notice you can put any other HTML around form elements. You can put divs. You can put, in this case, we put a main around this. You can put whatever you want to. But now we'll start filling out the form itself. So with every form field that we put in here, we have to put in a label. So like we saw before, so I'll put in a label tag. The label tag comes in empty, and this first one will be a name field. And we need to set up the association, so for equals name. And then this is going to appear now inside of the visual editor. And I'll go down the line. Now I want an input of a text area, not a text area, an input of a text. So it gives me an input text. That's all it gives me, though. It doesn't give me the other attributes that I need. So I need the ID to be equal to name, the name equal to name. And what's the difference? Well, the ID is to associate the for with the ID. The name is the value as it gets returned to the server. That's what will get returned back. So whatever I fill out in this field, it'll get returned. So now you'll see that there's an input text field in here, and that right now the position isn't what we want, but we'll fix that up in a bit. So that's an input text field. We'll go down and we'll continue. So I always want to start with the label. So I'm going to go to label, and this one is going to be for email. And I'm just going to type in email in the label. And for this, we want to use the email text field type. Let's see, does Dreamweaver have that? Actually, it does not. Oh, here it is. So email. So email type equals email. ID equals email. Name equals email. And you'll see what's happening here. So I don't have any styles right now, so everything's going to be on one string. So first of all, a couple of things. I'm going to go to File, Save As. And this should save it into my site. And here's my site. I want to call this form. So that's one thing. Second thing is I want to associate this with the style sheet that we already have. So in the CSS Designer, I'm going to click Sources. I'm going to choose Attach Existing CSS File, and then I can browse to my site folder and my CSS folder, associate that with the styles, and then I want to do that with a link. Click OK. So now you see the text updated. So I need to add additional styles here in the style sheet to get the form to display the way I want to. So I'm going to save my changes, go to the style sheet. And at the bottom of the style sheet, after the table styles, I'm going to put in an HTML comment, CSS comment, and I'm going to say form styles. And then I'm going to set the label to display as a block element. And then I'm going to add some padding on the bottom to push it away from the other elements, and a little bit of padding on the top too, just so that they don't crowd each other out. And that's it for now. I'm just going to save those changes. And then you can see that this got updated. All right, so we can keep working here. So we have the email. The next one that we want to include is a phone number. So label. And I'm doing this in the code. For equals phone. And then phone. And then if I go down a line, back in the insert panel, you can see I have the tell type. And then I just need to make ID equals phone. And then name equals phone as well. So then we have the fields, you can see them coming in here. Now there's not a lot of room in those fields, so that's one thing we want to adjust. It's got some default behaviors to it. We're going to want to adjust those as well. The next item is date. So I'll go down, and again, we'll put in a label. And the label, this one is going to be for equals date, or event. And this is going to be event date. And then, let's see, we're going to use the date input type. So, right here, date time. Actually, let's undo that. It's this one, date. There we go. And you can see the month, date, and year get added there. We need to add an ID of event, and name equals event. Save my changes there. Next, we want to do a background color, or a color. So we need to put in a label again. So label. This is going to be color. Just like background color. And in Dreamweaver, we have color. So input type equals color. You can see the color chip there. Name equals color. Okay. Next, we want to see if we can do the password. So again, throw a label field. This one is going to be for password. And then going down the line, is there a password? Yes, so right here, there's the password field. And ID equals password. Name equals password. And let's see, we have a few more, but for now I'm just going to put in one last one, that's the submit button. So here's the submit button. And you'll see what that looks like. You notice that the submit button isn't where I need it to be. So what I'm going to do here, and it doesn't look that good either by default. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a class to this and call it button. Okay, so we have a basic form here with some of the new HTML5 elements, and I want to style up this form. So in my style sheet, what I need to do is, you see how all these input text fields are this size, and maybe you want them to be a specific size. The other thing is the padding inside the fields isn't really that comfortable. It's pretty compressed. So if I preview this in the browser, I'll show you what I mean by that. Oh, I have to save all the files. So if we go File, Save All, and now I can go preview that in the browser. What is the problem? Anyway, so we're going to address those issues in the form styles section. So to select the input fields, we need a couple of different selectors. And we can't just say the input, because the input can be any of those inputs: text, telephone, email. It could be all of them. And input, it could also include the submit button. So we need to separate the styles. And the way that we do this is with something that's called an attribute selector. So if I type in input and then I open up a bracket, square brackets, type equals text, that will target the text type. And by using a comma, I can add more than one. So input type equals tel, and then input type equals email, for example. We might have to include more here. But so I can now give it some properties and values. So let's say the width I want for these is 200 pixels. And the padding I want, let's say, is 6 pixels and 9 pixels. So that'll give it more padding. And I just need to save those changes. And you can see what happens here. So those fields get larger, and the padding on the inside of those fields get larger. So the one that I didn't include here was the date. So I'll need to include that as well. So input type equals date. And you can string together styles like this. And you can see that that's much bigger now, so that's better. Then the next thing we want to do is want to style, well, we probably should add the password field because that doesn't look right. And then the submit button. So I need to do input type equals password. And let's see what that looks like. So yeah, that's better. And then the submit button itself. So I added a class to that button, and I called it button. So I'm going to now style that, and the way that you do that is input dot button. That's the class name that we gave it. And we want to change the display to block. So right now it's an inline element, so that's why it's on the same line as the password field. So this will separate it down. And then we can give it a background color. Here I'm using just a background color that we used before. It's a blue color. And then I'm going to give it some extra padding on the left, right, top, and bottom to give it a little bit more depth. We're going to set the border to none because it gives this horrible border by default. We want to just eliminate that. The color of the text needs to change. And then it's going to sit really close to all the other elements, so I'm going to separate that with the margin on the top. So if I go ahead and refresh here, you'll see what that looks like. I don't know why it's showing up way over here, though. That is weird. So that's styling that. And again, I'll try to go File, Save All. And let's try to preview this in a browser. Yeah, it's not working. So we'll take a look at, so that's the basics. So that's the basics of creating a form inside of Dreamweaver. And again, because this form is inside of this main class, main tag, I can move it around, I can assign it some values and do things like that.